Good afternoon, everyone. This is Orwell Fan 84 here, or as most people usually call me, Dan. I was trying to come up with ideas for new videos over the last couple days, and I was going through some of my old papers and things like that, seeing if I could maybe find an idea from them to present to everyone as a blog or something like that. And I came upon one of my old stories that I wrote for my freshman year English class. And I was going through the story, and I really liked it when I wrote it, and I thought that I would let you guys hear it. Now, I've made a couple corrections to it since that time to try to shorten it down a little bit, but likely something like this, I'm probably going to have to make two parts to the video. So if you see these videos up, please, I encourage you, of course, take a look at part 1 before you take a look at part 2. Otherwise, you might be a little bit confused. But that's, you all know that, I'm sure. Anyway, here's the story. Oh, and I didn't have a title for it before, but I came up with one just today. So the title of this short story is called Traveling to Twilight. Also, I'm sorry, but I don't have the story memorized, so I'm going to have to read it, which means that I'm not really going to be able to look into the camera as much as I'd like to. So I'm sorry about that, but it's a short story, but it's still semi-long, so it's going to be really hard for me to try to memorize it, so I'm just going to have to read it. So please excuse the fact that I have to read it. The group of runners had already gathered at the line by the time I arrived. Above, the sun shone bright with the promise of a new day. The mist had lifted, and nothing impeded the movement of the sun across the sky, shining down on each of us. It was a beautiful day for a race. We all lined up and waited tensely, each muscle in our body readied for what was before us. The starter raised the pistol above his head, the metal throwing its gleams of light into the eyes of the competitors. He stood, holding the pistol for a moment high in the air. Bam! We took off running as fast as we could. Soon we all settled down to a pace that suited our individual tastes. Beginning to hit my stride, I soon came upon a man of light brown hair, hints of gray flashing from the temple. His name was John. He was born to Donald and Kathy Umber, both well-established law firm partners at Umber & Umber. He grew up in absolute splendor. He had whatever he wanted, whenever he wanted it. He was 14 when his parents died, both victims of a 7-car pileup. The official cause for the pileup was determined to be slick conditions on the highway, coupled with a driver going too fast for the weather. There was little time for sorrow, however. John now was the sole heir of his parents' property. With the help of an uncle, he decided to sell the old home in Boston and move to Miami. John became president of the Brighton Real Estate Corporation by the time he was 25. He had amassed a large enough fortune to retire at the ripe age of 48 to pursue other interests. Everything he owned at home was top of the line, the very best the world could offer. He owned 10 cars, including his favorite, a bright orange 1959 Chevrolet convertible. He spent his days swimming in the Olympic-sized pool he had built entirely out of marble in his backyard, sailing in the Gulf of Mexico, and indulging in monthly trips to the Mirage in Vegas for 3-day gambling excursions. At 54, he suffered a stroke while at the craps table. He died waiting for the medics to arrive, gripping the $50,000 worth of chips in his hand that he had just won. John soon disappeared from my view, a cramp hampering his stride. It wasn't long before I came upon a young woman, breathing steadily, her ponytail bouncing side to side as she ran. It was held underneath a white cap on her forehead. She wore a blue jacket open to reveal a gray, faded University of Iowa t-shirt with a red stain down towards the bottom. Her name was Marlene. The T-shirt was her absolute favorite. A present from her older sister in college, Marlene wore it every few days around the campus that she had chosen for herself. She considered the shirt her good luck charm after she wore it to her econ final and got an A, in a class she had been pulling a C in at the time. Though many might still wonder why that made the shirt lucky in her eyes, she had also forgotten that there even was a test that day. She wanted to be in college ever since she was 15. She enjoyed the intellectual freedom it seemed to possess. Herself valedictorian of Heltham High School in Sandusky, Ohio, she owned an opinion on any topic imaginable. She had few friends in school, but she scarcely gave herself time to notice. She was too busy at the library embedding her mind with the knowledge of anything she could lay hands on. It was astonishing she managed to find time to get herself involved in school as the NHS president, speech secretary, and 4-H treasurer for her local chapter. She was ecstatic when the brown manila envelope arrived announcing that her first choice college had accepted her. Her first year had been beyond her wildest dreams. She had become increasingly involved in the growing war she heard about throughout campus and on television. When she heard a plan for a demonstration, she immediately set her sights on going. Unfortunately, a class kept her from going to the rally until later. The morning was cold, so she decided to bring a jacket with her to keep off the chill. She was, of course, wearing the University of Iowa t-shirt. Upon arriving at the area of the demonstration, she stood in wonder of the crowd that had gathered. Just as she got to where the rest of the crowd congregated, she heard shots coming from her right. She froze, unsure of what to do. She had never before heard the sound of a gun. Suddenly she felt something rush through her like a cold wind, and the next thing she knew, she was lying on the ground, the blood rushing from her chest where the bullet lay lodged in her heart. The thick blood ran down her t-shirt, staining the lower portion a deep, sickly red. The last thing she remembered seeing before passing out was the giant Kent State University banner hanging above the building in front of her. Marlene stopped to catch her breath as I continued on. The miles seemed to stretch on endlessly. The sun had reached its zenith in the sky, causing the road to shimmer as if it was frying along with the rest of us. I came upon a man who looked to be in his late 40s, wearing nothing but a white, dirty undershirt and a pair of jeans cut off at the knee to make shorts. His tennis shoes were soiled with mud, falling apart at the seams, clip-clopping as he ran. His name was Brian. Please, turn to part 2 if you'd like to find out his story.